Okay. Uh, Good morning, student. Now I am going to discuss the most important topic for the Indian national movement about the Indian National Congress and the first phase of the Indian National Congress or the Indian national movement. I am going to discuss. Okay. So actually, in the previous class, I have discussed why the Indian War of Independence is known as the Indian national movement. But right now, I am going to discuss the first phase of the Indian national movement. It was to be said the Indian national movement was officially started when the Indian National Congress came in existence. Indian National Congress what was came in existence in the year 1885, 28th of December 1885. Okay, so the Indian national movement officially started when Indian National Congress came in existence. 28th of December 1885, Indian National Congress established, and it was to be said the major role were played by the A.O. Hume. A.O. Hume played the major role. A.O. Hume, he was the British civil servant. Um, the first posting of the A.O. Hume in India, it was in the Simla. So in A.O. Hume, he was the, you can say, retired ICS officer, ICS officer, and he was posted in Simla. The first posting in the year 1876, and in 1882 he retired from the post, but he decided to stay in the India area. A.O. Hume, he decided to stay in India, and in India he appointed M.G. Ranade, M.G. Ranade as a political teacher, as a political or the spiritual teacher. Okay, so it was to be said he was the founder of the Indian National Congress, founder of the Indian National Congress. So Indian national movement was started from the year 1885. So 1885 to 1905, the first almost 15 to 20 years of the history, is known as the moderate phase. Why this phase is known as the moderate phase? Because all the leaders of this early phase of this movement were very liberal, has the very liberal attitudes, very liberal attitudes. And the initial leader of the Indian National Congress, they wanted to promote the Indian National Congress as a pan-India organization. So you can say the Indian National Congress was the first pan-India organization. And the early nationalist leaders, they wanted to promote the Indian National Congress as the pan-India organization. So they maintain the two types of the feature. The first, the meeting place of the Indian National Congress rotates every year. So due to this reason, the Indian National Congress meeting is known as the session. That is the first point. Just to maintain, to promote the Indian National Congress, that is INC, as the Pan India organization, the Pan India organization. So they did the two important, or you can say they maintain the two feature. The first, rotate the meeting of the INC, or you can say the meeting place of the INC, meeting place of the INC every year. So due to this reason, the meeting of the INC known as session. So this was the first feature. The early nationalist leaders, they wanted to promote the Indian National Congress as the um, pan India organization. And the second feature, the president of the INC will be other reason than its place of the session. So this was the second feature. Now I am going to discuss some best example to justify our points uh, regarding the second number of the points. That is, the president of the Indian National Congress will be the other reason than its place of the session. Okay, how I am stating this point, so we can discuss with this proper example. Okay, number one, year, president place and the home province of the president. First, year 1885, W.C. Banerjee was the first president of the Indian National Congress. And the session were held in the Bombay. The first session were held in the Bombay. But the home province of the W.C. Banerjee was in the Calcutta, right? The second, in 1886, Dadabhai Naroji, he was the president. The session were held in the Calcutta. And Dadabhai Naroji basically belonged to the Bombay region. This was the point number two. And now the third, in 1887, Badruddin Tayyabi, the session were held in the Madras, which basically belonged to the region of the Bombay. And the fourth, in 1888, George Yule, the session were held in the Allahabad, but he basically belonged to the region of the England, right? And also in 1887, 1888, 1889, William Wedderburn, the session of the Indian National Congress was held in the Bombay region. But he basically belonged to the region of the England. So that is the reason I am stating the president of the Indian National Congress will be the other reason than its place of the session. You can see with this with proper example, W.C. Banerjee and the session were held in the Bombay, but he basically belonged to the region of uh, the Calcutta. The same in 1886, he was basically belonged to the Calcutta region, but this basically belonged to the region of the Bombay, but the session were held in the Calcutta. Badruddin Tayyabi, he was the first Muslim president of the Indian National Congress, and the session were held in the Madras, but he basically belonged to the region of the Bombay. The same, the George Yule, he was the first British president of the Indian National Congress. The session were held in the Allahabad, and he basically belonged to the region of the England. William Wedderburn, basically the session were held in the Bombay, and with the but he basically belonged to the region of the England. And now I am going to discuss what was the first phase of the Indian National Congress. Okay, so actually 1885 to the 1905, this is the first phase of the national movement, and this is the first phase of the national movement. Phase of the national movement. All the leaders were very liberal. The staunch believer in the liberalism. They have the trust in the British judiciary system. They thought it was the act of providence that why the British came in India to bring the modernity in the societies. Okay, and they followed the constitutional gradualism. Constitutional gradualism. Constitutional gradualism means what? Actually, they believe in the British judiciary system, so they wanted the concession from the British government by step, not the abruptly shift. Well, they wanted the concession from the British government step by step, not abruptly shift. They followed the three P policies. This is called the first, that is the prayer, the second, the petition, the third, that is the propagation. So they follow the three important policies uh, to start this movement, and this is known as the three P policies. What is the three P policies they followed? The first P, that is called the prayer. So the first policies, this is called the prayer, means the moderate believers making the appeal from the Britishers and the petitions to the British government. Appeal and the petitions from the British government. Petitions means they raise their demand through the resolution, through the memorandum, through the newspapers, and propagation means what? They organize, they wanted to organize public meeting. The public meeting to raise uh, the mass appeal from the uh, against to the British government, right? Public meeting to organize the public meeting to just to start the movement, uh, meeting speeches or awareness, and mobilize um, the meetings against the British government, right? Public meeting to start the movement against the British, but they were completely against to the mass movement. Why? Because they thought the, the lackness of the literacy in the societies, lackness of the presence in the societies, in the mobs, lackness or have the fear of the violent movement. But the important contribution, you can say, important contribution of the moderate, they expose the colonial exploitation of the British rule. Okay, so this was the about the first phase of the national movement. So I have completed the first phase of this national movement, and the three P policies. This is called the three P policies: the prayer, petition, and the propagation. Means they wanted to organize public meeting to convince the peoples how the British government or the British administrative system and how the British government exploit their economic resources, to create a public awareness among the people. So that was the reason they organized the public meeting, just to start the movement and to create the public awareness public awareness against the British rule, right? So this is called the three P policies: the prayer, petition, and the propagation. And they follow what was the objective? So they follow the constitutional gradualism. And this is the first phase of the national movement. And also, why this movement was known as the uh, different phases of this movement, right? This was the against the liberal attitudes or the non-violence, violence, and the revolutionaries ideology. Okay, thank you. Now class is over.